So welcome to our Inclusive Design for Learning Basics cast for the Center for Integrating Research, Teaching, and Learning. And we're just going to cover the very essential pieces of our framework and what we're attempting to accomplish with this. So we're going to start with a warm-up, and we're going to start with the table since it's here. So, where did this table come from? Did it pop out of a volcano, form on the bottom of a riverbed?
Nope. Somebody made it.
Somebody made it, right? Somebody thought of it. Somebody was motivated by something, and they materialized it. Now, there are lots of different kinds of tables, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's changed a little bit since its invention. And it's changed through time a little bit, right? But it's still basically a table.
Mm-hmm.
So is the table, is it a tool or a crutch?
It depends on how or what you make of it. It can be a tool to like hold your food so that you're not eating out of your lap, but it can also be a crutch if you're always hiding behind it instead of like being out in the crowd and you're hiding behind your table. It can be like something you hide behind, or it can be a useful tool. It just depends how you use it.
Yes, exactly. And this tool or crutch thinking is sometimes very useful. I think that, the difference really is how we use something through time, right? So, and I'm using it as a tool, right, to put my coffee cup on. And sometimes we start out having something that is a tool, and over time it becomes a crutch. It's really just inhibiting, right?
Right, like PowerPoint.
Yeah, development, like PowerPoint, exactly like PowerPoint. Gosh. And, okay, so tool or crutch, toy or weapon. So what about this? This?
Tool?
Tool.
Tool,
Right.
unless you wield it like that.
It could be a weapon of
weapon,
opportunity,
yes,
couldn't
yes.
it? And, prop, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we were all actors, everything in here would be a prop, right? And we would be wearing costumes too, right? So, like, this is my teaching costume. It looks a lot like my other costumes. And I think that when we're teaching and learning, it's totally essential to remember that these things are just things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we need to use them as tools and toys for learning, and remember that and improvise. So, okay, and we're gonna get to the river and the framework. But first, let's talk about, so we hopefully, played outside as kids and had some experience with creeks and rivers, and if you ever built like a little dam. Did you learn anything from that experience?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What things float and what didn't?
Good, and float or sink. Ideas do that too. And, I would build like little dams with my sister and stuff, and we'd get like little waterfalls with generative potential. And the bottom line is that the river always finds a way, right? And we should remember that. And so that gets us a little bit farther to where I think we can talk about the river of motivation.
Okay.
Are you guys ready?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As we're gonna be.
Okay.
As we're gonna be.
So this is the river of motivation. And what this is just a simple metaphor that kind of contextualizes this inclusive design for learning framework, so it's easier to think about and use. And there's different levels that are happening here, but we're focusing on the classroom interaction level, right? Even though our neural networks and our psychology reflects this, what do we design as teachers?
You mean like lesson plans, or what do you? I'm trying to follow what you're.
Yeah. Do we design our students?
No.
No.
No. We can only design what we show them to get them excited about learning for themselves.
Yeah. We design our instruction.
Yeah.
That's what we do. And so that's really what this is about. And we have these three sort of major guidelines that are up here. Stepping in course. And I think that we're missing one that's really, really important. it's probably not going to be legible. Can you guys read that?
Adaptability.
Adaptability.
Awesome.
Accommodation strategies. Flexibility and use. And I just did something really bad, right? I turned my back as I was talking to you guys. And that's not useful for deaf people. It's not useful for most people, right? If you think about it, why would you turn your back on someone that you're trying to communicate knowledge to? Right? It just doesn't make sense. Anyway, how we represent things, like chalk on a chalkboard, is kind of the beginning of this little construction of what we're doing here. And then how people act on or express what they know, right? Kind of tells us what they think has been represented here. But in between that, we get this really magical engagement thing that happens.
Right.
People are engaged, they're into it.
Right.
And there's feedback between these. And what we want to do when we design instruction is we want to open this up, right? We want to make this as open and flowing as possible. And we want it to be adaptable, right? We want it to be flexible enough that when inevitably something goes wrong, right, we can change it to make it work. We can work together to make it work.
I was just sort of visualizing when you were talking about the feedback from action, engage, represent, and back and forth, like what do you call this? The rowing, like the rowers on a boat. Like you all have to be in tandem, and you're going forward and backward and forward and backward.
Oh my gosh,
to make
that's
it
brilliant! That is so good. Yeah.
So the feedback from and everybody on board with the same goals, the same motivation. I mean, your motivation may be different, but you're all working towards the same goal by rowing together. You know.
Yeah, that totally works. And so, you know, the river is going towards the goals, away from the goals.
Towards the goals.
Towards the goals. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Hopefully. That's the goal. And we have teachers' goals and we have students' goals, right? Are those goals always the same? No, unfortunately not. What happens when these goals are far apart, when the river spreads out? What happens?
You get slowed way down, meandering.
Yeah.
And the curiosity is no longer as relevant, I guess. Is that the word I'm looking for?
It's close. I think I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we want to bring these goals together as much as possible, right? We want our goals to be clear, and hopefully, you know, bring those together to kind of focus this a little bit. And it helps to have kind of little landmarks on the way, right? Break it down, because what's the big goal ultimately in what we're doing here? Learning.
Okay.
Learning and what's that other thing that goes along with learning all the time? It's kind of a two-sided thing.
I'm not sure what you're going for.
Well,
Like
I'm
learning
teaching.
and understanding, or learning and teaching.
I'm teaching, but I'm also learning.
Right.
And you guys are learning, but you're also teaching me, right?
Right. So we all learn and teach at the same time.
Yes. Oh my gosh. You know, in Russian, this I think the teaching learning is like one word.
Oh, awesome.
Isn't it brilliant? And you mentioned this hill of curiosity. So let's go there. What is this hill? What is this over here? If the hill goes up, or is the river going to go faster or slower?
Faster.
Yes.
And it'll cut deeper.
Yeah. And that would be great. So, and we've called it the hill of curiosity, which is a nice positive way of putting things. It's good to make things positive.
Right.
But you know, what might raise this hill a little bit?
Awareness of ignorance. Well, maybe that's too harsh, but awareness of something you don't know.
Yeah, partial understanding that sees itself in the mirror and acknowledges itself as partial and is
Right, and wants to be
ready to
told.
learn something.
Yeah.
And you know, there are so many examples of this, right? But the more that we can really connect to students' interests, the more this thing is going to go in the right direction.
Right. It'll also run itself to some extent. I
Yeah.
mean, if you really make the initial points relevant to the students, they'll pick up their own learning, they'll run with it, and they'll say, hey, what if we did blah? And then all you have to do as the teacher is say, you know, that's a really cool idea. I never thought of that. Let's do it.
Exactly.
And
You
suddenly
never
it's
thought
running
of it
itself.
that way before. And don't listen to anything that the Army Corps of Engineers does with rivers, right? Look at the Earth. That's what it's doing. Really, this is a basin of attraction over here, and this is a basin boundary.
It's 3:30.
Thank you, computer. We don't need to get into all of that. Okay, one more thing. Actually, there's many more things. But we have kind of performance-oriented people, right? And then we have mastery-oriented, motivated people. Tell me, do you guys remember anything about that?
Performance-oriented people are more focused on how well they do in terms of like evaluation purposes, whereas mastery-oriented people are more focused on actually learning.
Yeah, actually learning something. And so, this is a continuum, but the performance people over here like right, playing various games with all sorts of toys. And the mastery-oriented people are really into learning. And we have to perform to some extent, right? Because people expect things. But really, we're about the learning here.
Right.
And it's also important not to make this too clunky, right? Does it matter really how the book looks?
Doesn't matter how it looks as long as it functions.
Yes. as long as it floats.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so we need principles, I think. We've got principles. And that gives us a little bit of structure for designing this. And church structure is good as long as it's what?
Adaptable?
Yeah.
Ah.
Okay. Let's go with principles. Now we have to rotate this camera thingy stuff so we can see our other picture.
That should be good. Is it?
It's not
Still
showing anything on the screen.
working.
Oh, here we go.
Dun, dun, dun.
We
Cool.
can move it for the second part if we want.
There we go.
And this is,
Can you read it out?
I'm going to let you guys do the hard part here. Because we have to some extent, kind of figure out what it is that we mean by all these words that we have up here. But more importantly, we have to brainstorm examples to kind of illustrate that and bring that to life, right? Remember the fish is fish. So let's start with equitability. That's a good place to start. What's going on with this equitability principle? What is that?
Well, equitable use is a lot like equal use, except that rather than having the same exact thing for two people, there's kind of something that serves the same purpose for two different people is not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah. So like, you could give Jesse a piece of paper with something on it and me the same thing, right? And that would be equal, but that wouldn't be equitable, right? I
Right.
can't perceive a piece of paper. Well, I mean, I can't not the words anyway. It just wouldn't make sense, right?
Right.
And that kind of one size fits all equalness doesn't make sense for diverse people. And the other day we kind of drew an umbrella. This is kind of like an umbrella principle.
Right.
Because why do we need an umbrella?
To protect us from inequity.
Yes, it's raining inequity outside. Great. And really, it's kind of like the spokes on an umbrella if you think about it. Like all these other principles and examples of those principles feed into making what we do more equitable. Hopefully. That's the goal, right?
Okay.
And yeah, I think that it's also important to realize as we're walking through these that these are ideals, right? These are principles. And we're never going to be perfect, right? But it gives us
But they
something
can
to
guide
strive
and
for.
focus us.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like a balanced diet too, right? We can't do all of this all the time, but like we can start
Right.
to get a feel for it. Great. Okay, so what's next?
Flexibility in use.
Dun dun dun, big
Yes.
one. Okay, so what is flexibility in use? What does it mean?
Let's see. The way I always see this flexibility piece is in not being beholden to one mode or one evaluation method or beholden to one particular way of doing things, but giving people options so that they can say, okay, maybe I'm not great at writing essays, but I really like to speak in front of people. So, I would be able to give the talk, and somebody else would write a paper, but it's about the same information. We're all learning the same way. It's our expression is different, so it's like a flexible design in that way.
Yeah, you're opening up that last piece, that action and expression piece,
Right.
a little bit when you're flexible like that.
Yeah.
Can you think of another example of being flexible? Have you ever had a teacher be flexible for you?
I don't. Well, I mean, I've had teachers that have been flexible to accommodate different learning styles.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Because the point is not, right, how we traditionally do things and how we've always done them in the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
The point is not the shape of our boat, really, right? The point is learning.
Right.
And sometimes we have to change what we're doing a little bit to make that work.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Flexibility, so important. Don't forget to stretch, right?
Right.
Stretch ourselves a little bit.
Yeah.
What's next?
Perceptible information.
This is big for people like me. Any kind of sensory difference, this perceptibility piece is huge. So what is that?
Well, information's not going to do you a whole lot of good unless you can perceive it. And this isn't just a sensory thing. Also, different people are able to understand concepts if they're presented a little bit differently, because everyone has different past experiences. So this, I guess, could be a subset of flexibility and use just for the delivery of information.
Yeah, totally. And so a lot of times when people talk about universal design, they get really stuck on modalities. And different modalities is important, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even more important is how those representations are contextualized and put together, right? We don't want our boat to be too clunky.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We don't want cognitive overload and all that awful stuff.
Right.
And so we really have to think about what is it that we're representing that really matters.
Mm-hmm.
And how can we do that in a way that is both clear and a little bit flexible, so that it can be perceived by people who perceive differently.
It's very challenging, but it's worthwhile.
Yeah, it takes practice.
Yeah.
It's totally worthwhile. Okay, and as we go through these, if you invert these principles, you will see the barriers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can start to think about, well, I've noticed this thing is not perceptible for a wide variety of abilities. So boom, barrier, right? I've
Right.
noticed this piece of our educational system that is just not very flexible at all. Boom, barrier. Okay, next.
All right, simple and intuitive.
Oh, big one. So does that mean dumbed down and stupid? What does that mean?
No, streamlined maybe, but not dumbed down.
Oh, streamlined. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not overcomplicating matters, but not dumbing things down to the point where you're not learning anything anyway.
Yeah.
So it's finding that balance between those 2 points and making things simple and understandable.
Yeah. The point of education, right, is not processing information. It's building knowledge and making that knowledge useful, right? And so, what we want to make this business of this interaction system, this representing, engaging, acting, as simple and intuitive as possible, so that we can really engage with what should be the real challenge, which is learning, which is challenging, and not always simple and not always intuitive. But how we go about working together to address that challenge should be as simple and intuitive as possible.
Right.
And I think that often, and I think you said this, Emily, the other day, we're hiding behind our complexity, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're hiding behind our jargon and our sort of elaborate concepts because we don't understand sort of the underlying simplicity, that little
Right.
good piece inside that really matters. And so the more that we can get to that and communicate that to students, I think the better. Great.
Yeah.
Can you guys think of examples of being simple and intuitive? We can do inverse, like barrier here. Is Blackboard simple and intuitive?
Oh, jeez.
Barriers. Problems. But so, but some things, stand out, I think, as being relatively more simple or intuitive in our classrooms. Clear instructions, right? Clear expectations.
Yeah.
Wow, it's a huge. I can't tell you how many students come to me. They're like, I have no idea what's expected of me. Like
That's why I love rubrics.
Yes.
It's one of those things it's hard to put together, but once you have it together, your expectations are so clear for your students. And you just give them this rubric, and then they know, okay, if I want 4 points out of 4 points, I have to do X, Y, or Z. And if I don't, I get 2 points. And then you can also gauge how well they're understanding what they're trying to learn, because then you can make the rubric adjust it in such a way that you can actually see what they're learning. And so it's simple, but not simple. It's, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
It's emergent simplicity that contains within it so much complexity.
Indeed.
And I think that's a great example. And rubrics are wonderful because they clarify things a little bit
when they're
for
used
us.
as tools.
And then they're used as tools,
But
right?
if they're used as
and
crutches,
we should never let go of our flexibility to let those become crutches. We can align, right? We can align our boat and our interaction system with our assessments, and that alignment is so powerful. It's really good. It's good stuff. Okay, great. What's next?
Tolerance for error.
Dun dun dun. Error. Who makes it? Do we make errors?
no,
Really?
we're perfect. We're perfect.
We don't, but I know people that do.
Right.
We're human beings, and
Everybody makes mistakes.
Often, especially if you're one of these performance people, errors are bad, right? Mistakes are bad. I think mistakes are just lessons to be learned, right? Some lessons are harder than others. Tell me about this principle. What does it mean?
Well, a lot of people learn from their mistakes, so if you don't give people a second chance, their, grades are going to suffer even though they've actually learned the concept.
Yeah.
And giving feedback when people have made a mistake.
Oh, feedback's so important. Yes.
Yes.
And, having just harsh grading without any chance to make up the mistakes that you've made can cause people a lot of stress, and that can impact performance as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And not just that, but they're learning too. I mean, if you know you've gotten it wrong the first time and you're not going to get a second chance, why learn the material?
You get so discouraged.
You get so discouraged,
Right.
and you're just like, well, what's the point? I'm not going to get any recognition if I learn it anyway, so why should I learn it? If you don't have that internalized, desire for learning, just for learning's sake, if you haven't gotten to that point yet, you're going to say, well, what's the point? And just stop.
Exactly.
And we don't want that.
You don't want that at all.
No.
And it's not that, this kind of links back to simple and intuitive a little bit. It's not that we want to lower expectations of people, right? That's almost like one of the worst things that we can do. We want high expectations for everybody.
But realistic.
But realistic and tolerant of there's going to be error on the way. And let's learn from that, right?
And bring them, support them so they can reach those high expectations.
Yay,
not
scaffolding.
Knock them down at the knees.
Yes, exactly. And that concept of scaffolding, I think, is really important. It's sort of supporting just enough without constraining too much. So room to screw up, room to learn from screwing up. What's next?
Let's see. Optional physical effort.
Dun dun dun. You mean we don't all have to be like Superman? What does that mean?
Let's see. Design can be used efficiently and comfortably, allowing for a range of physical abilities.
So this is huge for our friends with mobility impairments of any kind. But it's also just a good principle. And in teaching and learning, it's nice to be sometimes like physically engaged in some activity, right? But is that what it's about?
Not really.
Not really. What is it that we're really trying to exercise?
Our minds.
Yeah. What's that thing that kids use that we tend to grow out of?
Their imagination.
Yeah. Oh my
Oh.
gosh.
Okay. I was like,
The
what?
thing that
What have
turns
we grown
everything
out of
into
our-
a toy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to exercise our imagination and our minds and our ability to learn.
Exactly.
That's the thing we really want to work on. So, having non-optional physical effort could really shut somebody out of
It's
doing that.
3:45.
So in geology, right,
Mhm.
we often require students to go into the field.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm all about the field, like climbing the mountains, like being in the real landscapes. Like, I love it. But not everybody is able to do that.
Right.
And so I think it's really important to acknowledge that and say, there's still so much in our field that these people can do and have a very sort of valuable contribution to.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we make that optional, right, bring the field to them as much as possible.
Right.
We've sort of opened that up a little bit.
I actually saw this really cool story about people who are, for one reason or another, not able to go out to these places. Like maybe they want to go on a vacation to the Leaning Tower of Pisa or whatever, but
Yeah.
they're not able to leave their hospital beds.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe
And
they're,
so-
don't have any money like I used
or
to.
yeah. But these people would then wear cameras on their like heads or take a
Like a
camera with
GoPro
them.
camera thing.
Yeah, and they would just take them through the museums or take them through these sites and describe what they were seeing, and
Wow.
they would actually talk about it. And so I don't remember if they got to this point, but I was thinking, how cool would it be if they were like live Skyping kind of thing?
Oh yeah, we've
And
done that
so-
for geology stuff.
Yeah, and so then you could say, hey, can you turn to the left? And then the person in the museum would turn to the left. And I mean, how cool is that?
That's totally awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yay, optional physical effort.
yeah.
Okay, we're almost there. We're getting there. What's next?
Size and space for approach and use.
Oh, good. Good. What does that mean?
Well, again, this goes back to flexibility, really. One example of barriers that we have is in this very classroom. These tables are actually too short for a wheelchair to fit under, and the space between the tables is too small
Yeah.
for folks in wheelchairs to actually get by.
At least they're not bolted to the floor, right? So there's
Right.
a little bit of we can
And
move
there's
it
no
around and get it
step-
out of the way.
There's no step, the auditorium classrooms have the steps down with the chairs, so
Mhm.
like you can't even go down those stairs if you're in a wheelchair. I mean, it's just not, it's not an option,
Yeah.
so.
It's constraining. There's not enough space to move around and do things.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of examples of this, and it's locked into the architecture and the furniture of things,
Mhm.
right? And often
Yeah.
as teachers, we feel powerless to change these things, but we do what we can, right?
Yeah.
And when we recognize this, instead of sort of not having very much of a hill,
Mm-hmm.
if we can recognize it, right, we can say something about it. Say, hey, it's not equitable. So great, and I think it applies. Size and space applies also to kind of our representations. So obviously, I'm a total hypocrite here because representing visually is not an art of mine. But font size, space on a page, space in a figure. You'll read these science papers sometimes, and it's like, must cram so much information into tiny page. But really, when it comes to design, there's a way to balance that a little bit. And electronic formats tend to be a little more flexible as far as like people can
Yeah.
zoom, right, and they can change contrast and stuff.
It's also the simple and intuitive part again. Is like
Yep.
making your graphical representations easily understood. That's something that's in our group constantly being talked about. Is you start off with this figure that you think is great and shows all the information
And it is
possible, and it is great, but nobody else can look at it and glean the information that you're trying to represent with this graphical piece of art.
Oh my, you just summarized like the way that I write most of the time. I'm working on it. It's a work in progress. It makes sense to me.
Exactly. But I mean, it goes back to the simple and the flexible, and you just keep adapting that piece of art until it is a piece of art.
Yeah,
And
you get
then-
feedback from other people.
Exactly, and you come back and you change your design just a little bit here and there, and then you come back, It's that iterative process we were talking about a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's just
Iterative improvement, good.
yeah.
I love these sort of connections between these principles that start to come out.
It makes it much more manageable because when you look up at that list with
It's
like
a bunch of words.
well, let's see, how many do we have? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We got 12 things up on the board, and it's like, how am I ever going to do 12 things and keep them all straight and keep track of everything? But because they all overlap so much, you're really only doing like 2 things, right? Being flexible and adaptable.
You start to align these things, right? And it becomes natural. It's like anything. A lot of practice is good. Okay, what's next?
Did we do class climate yet?
No, we should do that.
Okay.
Climates are complex. We're still working on understanding this as like a society. But I think that there's a lot that we can do sort of to make climate better, a classroom climate.
Right.
Let's focus on that. So what is this? It's like a warm, fuzzy education term. What is class climate?
The way I've always viewed this class climate is how safe do the students feel?
Okay.
Both physically, how safe do they feel like it, but also like just mentally or emotionally safe.
Yeah.
So can they be wrong in front of everybody and not be laughed at?
Tolerance for error.
Exactly. Can they ask a dumb question that's really not a dumb question, but
an honest question.
An honest question. And not be laughed at or not feel like they're being singled out if you respond to their question, and it's like, how safe does everyone feel to just be honest and make mistakes and learn?
Yeah.
And that's how I've always viewed that.
Oh, that's good. That's a good. Is there something you want to add to that? Class climate.
Have you ever had a class climate that was bad or good or?
Well, it's really difficult in large lecture hall type of classes with hundreds of students. I don't think it's very easy.
Remember, like what we were talking about with the teacher up front trying to control feedback on a whole class scale, right? And you just get this stagnancy, right?
Right.
If you walk into a classroom and it's quiet and boring, that's bad.
Right.
People are not engaged, right?
I've known teachers that try to break the ice with jokes and stuff, but that can only go so far. It's partly on the students to try to be open at least.
Well, and it helps a lot too to break them into smaller groups, right? And to
divvy up responsibilities, get them up and moving. I mean, there's ways to do it. It's just really much more challenging in a large classroom setting, but it's not impossible. Yeah, it's just more challenging.
You gotta sort of start with smaller groups and build up to it, right?
Precisely.
It's emergent. And it should be positive. It should be welcoming. It should be a little bit fun and silly. It's not supposed to be entirely like too serious. And it's one of those things that is really hard to nail down with quantitative numbers and things, right? But we can feel it, right? You can tell in the classroom. And I think that it's really important in, like you were saying, how students sort of feel.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we care about their feelings. They're people. Which brings us to our next warm and fuzzy educational term, which is community of learners.
Yes.
So what is that?
Well,
we can cheat with the cheat sheet. What is the cheat sheet?
The cheat sheet says, that's hard to say, by the way, design promotes purposeful collaboration and fosters meaningful communication. So I guess I was skipping ahead with my class climate.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Thing, but they're very related, I think.
Collaboration, meaningful communication. That's a lot to ask. But it's just a community, right?
Right.
It's a community of people learning stuff. And we're all on the same boat, right?
Yep.
Should be. And everybody has a little something to contribute. I don't think we'll get to the mirror trick today, but maybe at the live panel we'll get into that. Okay. And we have other communities, right, that we participate in, so we know a little bit about these and how they work. But if you can really get that communication going and collaboration going, they'll start to act like a community. It's amazing.
When
it's
when
way
you
more
see
effective.
it happen, when it actually happens
Yes,
in
it's
the
magic.
classroom, it's just like, wow. I remember one time I was ostensibly teaching a lesson on, I don't remember what, some chemistry topic of some sort. And somehow we ended up talking about light and astronomy and stars and extraterrestrials, and it just went on and on and on. And anybody else walking in that room would have probably said, "You are so off topic. You know, get back into equilibrium or whatever you were talking about in the first place."
Oh yeah.
And instead, they're curious. They want to know, and they want to know what you know. And then it's like all of a sudden we're saying, now, what if we wanted to know about light and how astronomers use light to figure out how far away a star is? What would we do? Where would we go? Where would we start?
Bring together those different perspectives.
Yeah.
And
it's a magical moment when that kind of thing happens.
Yay! Let's do more of that.
Exactly.
Yes. And I think we hit a lot of really good stuff here. Do you guys want to add anything else? Did we forget? We're always forgetting stuff, right?
Well, I wrote the guidelines up there as well, so.
Good. You want to go through those one more time? What are our guidelines?
Oh, I actually missed one. Multiple means of engagement should be up on the board, but it's not.
It's there. It's hiding. It's in between the representing and expressing acting thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Multiple means. We could just sum it up as multiple means.
See, that's imperceptible information if it's not even.
Yeah, if it's not even. We're talking about it. Hopefully, it's perceived at some level.
Mm-hmm.
And adaptable accommodation strategies.
Yeah, that's that adaptable piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I was emailing an incoming blind student yesterday. He was asking me about accommodations and how does this work. Mm-hmm. And I told him, yes, there's formal systems that are in place. There's official accommodations that you get, but the most important thing you can do is work with your teachers to make it work, right?
Yeah.
Because accommodations are just like the rest of it. One size fits all doesn't work in lots of different contexts.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work for clothes, and it doesn't work for learning.
Exactly. That's a beautiful. It's design. Design is
Yes.
design, right? It's a beautiful analogy. And I think that the more sort of tools we have in our toolbox for accommodating various needs, the better. And that's something we'll get into in our class next week. Is some of those tools and technologies that we can use. Great. Anything else?
I think that was it for
Dun,
today.
dun, dun.